team, as well as a mentor in residence. And I'm also a member at EDGE as well, as founder of Divity Group, which is a facilitation and program development company, as well as Accelerate Her Future, which is a social enterprise that I'll talk to a little bit about throughout the session. And before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that for thousands of years, this has been and still is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, of the Credit First Nations, the Anishinaabe Nation, Huron, Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Sheridan College sits on these lands, and it's our collective responsibility to honor, respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We're grateful for the opportunity to be working on this land. So if we could go to the next slide, our roadmap for today will be pretty interactive. So we will be engaging all of you, and if you're comfortable, we would love for you to participate through chat and using your mics. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Once we do our welcomes and introductions, we'll jump into the formal presentation, which again is interactive. We have some polls and questions and Jamboards that we're going to ask you to participate in. We will leave some time for question and answer with you, although we will check in from time to time through the chat to make sure that we are keeping this interactive. So as questions or comments come up, please pop them in. Raise your hand if you want to participate. We will have opportunities throughout, and then we'll have some wrap up and closing before we're done for the day. So if we can go to the next slide, a few housekeeping items to keep in mind. We ask that you keep your mic muted during the session just to minimize the background noise. We have a number of people joining us today, so this will make the experience as effective for all of us, so we can really focus on the discussion. The session is being recorded, so please be mindful of this. So share what you're comfortable sharing, mute or turn off your camera if that's more comfortable for you. So just letting you know that we are recording. Accessibility is important to us, and we are providing captioning for today as well. And the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, which we'll send out by email to everyone as well, in case you want to watch again, stop, rewind, rewatch any parts of the presentation. On the bottom of your screen, you're going to find the chat feature, which I see some of you have already activated. So if you could please go in there, I just want to make sure everyone has access. Please type in your first name and where you're joining from. And let's just see where everyone is joining us from, and that goes for our team as well. I'd love for everyone to participate. And throughout the session, this is where we'd love to, we see Ryan from Brampton, Andrews from Toronto, awesome, Kamran from Oakville, so amazing, lots of Mississauga in the house, fantastic. So this is where you'll share your comments and questions, and again, you can raise your hand with the hand icon, and we will make sure that we come to you throughout the session. My colleague Cole and Simi will be supporting us as well. I'm going to turn it over to each of you to do a brief introduction. So Cole, if you could, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you can share a little bit about what you do at EDGE, and Cole is our host for today.
So hello everyone, my name is Cole Arnett. I am the Client Experience Specialist at EDGE, and I work among the programs team and assist them with many of their day-to-day functions and tasks, as well as assisting with presentations and workshops just like this one. I'm looking forward to each and every one of you learning a lot from social enterprise and getting introduced to social enterprise as a whole. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity given that we have some amazing speakers today who are well versed in the topic. I'll leave it to Simi.
Hi everyone, I'm Simi. I'm the Administrative Specialist with EDGE, and I actually just recently started working with EDGE. So I'm also really excited to hear the speakers today and just enjoy the workshop just like everybody else.
I think it's day 2 for Simi, right? Awesome, welcome. This is great. We'd also like to thank all of you for sharing your questions through the Eventbrite registration. We've reviewed them all, and we'll do our best to answer those that came up more frequently and as many of them as we can. All right, so let me introduce my colleagues joining us. If we can go, hey Ryan, welcome. I see you're online as well, perfect timing. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'd like to introduce my two colleagues that are joining us today. We have with us Chris Beth Cowie. Chris Beth is our incubator programming lead at Edge, and also a social impact entrepreneur and mentor, speaker, entrepreneurship instructor. I don't know how you do it all. She does a lot in the community, and her mantra is make a difference. So as a social entrepreneur for the last 7 years, Chris Beth is co-founder of 2 companies and 1 not-for-profit. And this mantra has fueled the energy and inspiration behind her ongoing work in various social and entrepreneurial initiatives. Through her organization, Empowered for X, Chris Beth empowers and supports aspiring and established entrepreneurs of all ages to get started by sowing the seeds, committing to the process, taking action, and reaping the results. So thank you, Chris Beth. We also have Ryan Knight joining us. Ryan is a serial social entrepreneur who is passionate about building inclusive, sustainable, and resilient communities using social enterprise as a tool. He's the founder of Detailing Nights and ACBN Canada, which we'll hear about more throughout the session. Detailing Nights is a B Corp certified waterless mobile car cleaning company that uses a student franchising model to teach entrepreneurship to local at-risk youth. And ACBN Canada holds monthly networking events and business building workshops to help solidify the foundation of local minority-owned businesses to ensure they're sustainable and continue to grow. So thank you both for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Beth, who will take us through a little bit of an introduction about Edge, and then we'll jump into all things social enterprise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Golnaz, for that introduction, and everyone that's here. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Like Golnaz said, I wear multiple hats, and one of them is here at Edge, my role focusing primarily on the incubation of our companies. So I'm just going to talk a little bit. Cole, you can go to the next slide. And so here at Edge, really looking at supporting entrepreneurs and change makers. We focus on acting as a bridge into Sheridan and out of Sheridan as well. Our community is comprised of students, faculty, alumni of Sheridan, but also, as some of you are, members of Sheridan Edge as well. We also support community members as well, so external to our campuses. And so we focus on, helping to foster creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship at Sheridan. It's been really cool. Our team has expanded. Golnaz recently joined our team less than a year ago, I believe. And 1 year, okay, 1 year officially, awesome. And so we have a huge focus on social innovation, social enterprise, and really working with her. Her expertise has helped us build out our curriculum in that space to serve you all better. You can go to the next slide. So at Edge, there are 3 main areas that we focus on, supporting aspiring entrepreneurs and change making. And I say aspiring because we work with people who just have an idea and really help them get to that stage of commercialization by providing them with workshops, training, mentorship, and access to funding, which is really important, as you know, for a lot of startups. That initial seed capital could definitely help propel their businesses forward. Serving, as I mentioned before, serving Sheridan, the community of Sheridan, as well as external to that. So to everyone, if it's your first time engaging with us, thank you for being here. If you know about us, thank you for coming back again. It says that we're doing something great. You can go to the next slide. So just to give you a little bit about some of our focus areas, creativity, human-centered design, very fundamental to who we are as an organization and the way that we work in supporting our ventures, making sure that it's an inclusive community first and foremost. And it's amazing, from our team all the way to the entrepreneurs that we serve. We're not even the types of companies that we serve. It's not just tech focused. We really take a holistic approach in terms of looking at where the needs are and really fueling the supports to get you to the next level. And as I mentioned earlier, and Golnaz alluded to it as well, social innovation is at the forefront and helm of the work that we do. And so throughout our conversation, we're going to be talking about impact. How does that make a difference? What does that really mean? You can go to the next slide. I want to just say with our partners and supporters, the work that we do could not be possible without these people and from our broader network. So Sheridan as a whole, iCube UTM, if I believe some of you have applied to our Leap Startup League, and we're currently doing that in partnership with iCube, basically helping you go through series of workshops to really propel your venture forward. We've partnered with the various business economic development centers within the community of Halton, Mississauga, and Brampton. And we also have some partnerships due to some recent partnerships with the Community Foundations of Canada, really working to support companies that are looking to get in front of the investment readiness or apply to the investment readiness program. And the final acknowledgement here is, thankful to the Government of Canada, the Federal Economic Development Agency, that has helped us propel the work that we've done thus far. You can go to the next slide. So just before I pass it back to Golnaz, I wanted to just briefly talk about our programs very quickly, and then give you all an opportunity to participate as well. So we have here 4 major programs, and through it all, social enterprise runs through the veins of what we do. We do serve companies that are not social enterprise, but are curious or wanting to learn to develop their business as such. So Explore is our first program, and really looking at, if you just have an idea, how could you further develop that? So we take you through a series of creativity workshops, entrepreneurship workshops, initial ones, and giving you some exposure to market research. The next one is Leap, which, as I mentioned before, we have partnered with iCube this term to go through a series of workshops, all the way from ideation to getting you to that MVP to really test and validate your idea. It's really getting you into that next one, which is Rise, which, now that you've gotten some validation, you're now working on traction and momentum. You're probably making your first sale at this point in time as well. And for the soul level, really looking at growing that traction, looking at scaling that, really looking at optimizing your venture overall. So I just want to invite you all. Cole is going to put a poll on the screen, and the question is, which stage of venture development do you identify with? So just to give folks a chance to engage. So I see the numbers coming in. It's really cool to see this. Thank you so much for participating as well. And if you're not sure, that's totally fine too. You're in the right place. Awesome. Okay, so I think 2 more, and that might be me waiting. It's probably wanting me to poll as well, but I think, Cole, are you able to show what the final results? Can you probably stop sharing your screen? And
I should be able to find a way to show the results once I end the poll, and you guys should all see it right now. Okay,
so awesome. Can everyone see? The majority of our folks that are in the room are in the Explore stage of venture development, which is super great and a great place to be. It demonstrates that there's a hunger and appetite to, learn about entrepreneurship. And for the folks that are in Leap and at the Rise stage, if you're not a member with us, the invitation definitely to all of you that's present. We will talk a little bit about how you could join our community if you're not already a member. But thank you so much for participating in that poll. And you can see to date, we have served more than, in 2019, so these numbers are a little dated, but in 2019, we served more than 3,500 participants and held over 140 networking and training sessions. To date, I know that we're well over 200, we've served over 200 clients since we've opened our doors in 2017. So with that, I wanted to just, give you a little overview, insight about who Edge is, and an opportunity for you to connect and plug in accordingly. Over to you, Golnaz.
Awesome, thanks, Ivy, that was awesome. If we can go to the next slide. So just wanted to share a little bit about the Investment Readiness Program. In November 2018, the government announced the creation of the Social Finance Fund and the Investment Readiness Program, which is the precursor to this fund. And the intention with the IRP is to prepare special purpose organizations, which include social enterprises, to participate in the social finance market. The Social Finance Fund will make up to $755 million over the next 10 years available to social purpose organizations in terms of funding. And if you're interested in learning more, on our YouTube channel for EDGE, we did run a webinar last month about social finance and investment readiness that you can absolutely go and watch to learn all things about what I'm speaking to. What I did want to just touch on, particularly for those that are currently running, and you can be at any stage of venture development as a social enterprise or social purpose organization. Here in the Peel and Halton regions, the Investment Readiness Program mobilization is led by the Oakville Community Foundation, which is the lead partner of Brant, Halton, Peel Regional Partnership. This is a consortium of 6 community foundations that include Brampton and Caledon, Brant County, Burlington, the Community Foundation of Halton North, as well as Mississauga and Sheridan College through EDGE. So we're very proud to be part of this consortium with the community foundations in our region. The second round of applications have now opened and will be running through October 9th. Ryan, am I correct on that? Deadline is October 9th? Or Chris, Beth?
That's right.
Yeah, awesome. And so if you're interested in applying, there are some sessions coming up through EDGE, as well as Ryan and Chris Beth can maybe talk to programming at the end of the session as well. So please keep an eye out, check out their website. It is a funding opportunity that currently is open for social enterprises for submission of proposals that closes on October 9th. So if we can go to the next slide, we are ready to jump in our programming on all things Social Enterprise 101. So I just wanted to quickly run through what we'll cover off over the next hour or so. So we will take you through some definitions of social enterprise. We'll examine what impact means, and we'll focus specifically on the UN Sustainable Goals as one framework, if you will. We'll provide some examples of social enterprises as well to give you an opportunity to apply learning and insights into creating or enhancing a social enterprise that you may have. And also this will be very interactive, an opportunity to connect and engage in discussions with the community that's here today. So with that, if we could queue up our video, we have a short video that Cole will launch momentarily for you to watch. And as you watch, I'd like you to give thought to 2 questions or 2 things. What one key learning about social enterprise stands out for you as you watch the video? And also, as you watch it, I want you to think about a social enterprise that you may already know that stands out, and we're going to debrief after the video on those 2 questions. So over to Cole, please.
Many people would like to know, what is a social enterprise? We here at InventShift.com are happy to help. A social enterprise is a business that is using the power of commerce to have a positive impact on the local economy. Regular businesses will always strive for profit and don't really care about the impacts they cause. A nonprofit, on the other hand, often lives only from donations. A social enterprise is a business that takes the positive aspects of each of these concepts and uses both of them to maximize a positive impact on the local community. Simply put, social enterprise is a business that fights for good, a business that fights for regular people while maintaining profitability. Some social enterprises build a service that serves a cause on its own, and some build concepts that give a part of its profits for an important cause. Learn more about social enterprise on InventShift.com.
Okay, so if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to pass it over to Chris Beth.
Awesome. So this is an opportunity for you to unmute yourself. I can see everyone who is on the screen. But as Golnaz said, after looking at that video, what is one key takeaway you took from what is about social enterprise from watching that video? So if you want to raise your hand on the screen, if you're online, or if you go at the bottom of your screen, you will see that there is an option, a hand option as well to raise, and I will call on you then. One key takeaway. Do I have any favor? Let's go. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is my first time watching the video, and from what I'm understanding, a social enterprise is like it says, a company that makes profit and also help the community. And I guess the company that came to mind was Tim Hortons. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know that they also make profit and they help the community in events and some way of sponsoring events. So would that be part of a social enterprise?
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. And in terms of example, I am not 100% sure about Tim Hortons. I know Tim Hortons has more of a corporate social responsibility model, and we're going to get into the difference between a corporate social responsibility model versus an actual social enterprise as it's now being defined in the society. So that's a great suggestion. And so yes, Tim Hortons is a company generating revenue. They have an impact focus, but how it's structured, it's not, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, Golnaz, you can speak to this as well. For me, it's more of a corporate social enterprise, corporate social responsibility model that they do. I saw, thank you so much, Favor. I saw Jazraj, you had your hand up as well?
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like similar to what Favor said. For example, in the video, it said that it's basically similar to corporations making profit and then giving away that for the societal development. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct words, but I believe that would be the general takeaway. So my question is that what would be the difference? I mean, for example, if a corporation makes a lot of profit and keeps on making donations, then how would it be different from this?
Could I jump in and say that's an excellent question. We're going to give you some definitions of social enterprise momentarily. Ryan's going to take us through that, and let's reserve that, go through the definitions, and then we'll come back to your question to see if we've answered it and if there's some clarity around the difference. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. I saw Matthias, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking like an organization like Stella's House, which helps community. You know, the people in the community have services that are not mostly attainable through other ways, you know? So, and I feel like that would possibly be a social enterprise.
An example? Awesome. I'm not familiar with them, but it sounds like they can definitely have that model attached to it. Andres, you had your hand up. What was a takeaway?
Yeah. So I think what I was getting at the idea of the video was that a social enterprise is something that perhaps uses its specific utility as a business to create social change in some capacity. I have some of a friend of mine and I've noticed a couple of people within the realm of film and television production starting companies that are geared towards specifically creating content by underserved communities in the realm of media production. And would that be something that's considered a social enterprise?
Yes, based on what you just described, not knowing too much about it, so definitely that generating of revenue, but how they do it, by hiring the underserved or underrepresented communities to tell their stories and using that as a way to generate revenue. That, based on what I heard, I believe that would fit into the current definition of a social enterprise is. So thank you so much for sharing. Jose, you had your hand up as well.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Matthias, how are you? Good to see you from yesterday. My question is about, well, obviously social enterprise. A couple of years ago, I was the president of a Rotaract club here in Tegucigalpa. And we were totally social. We were nonprofit. Everything we could do, we donated it to a specific cause, be it the environment, be it education. So I'm not sure if that's a social enterprise because, well, it's almost all volunteer work. Later on, when I graduated from Rotaract, I engaged with Rotarians. And there was this one fellow who was about my age who had a program, he said it was a social enterprise. And what he did was like round up some books from people so they can donate it to schools. And he said that that was his job. That was how he generated income for himself. And basically, he said that he received donations and then he did the social work and then he gained publicity and recognition and stuff. And most of the time he used it, well, I don't want to say used, but he counted on the support of people who would um, volunteer to help him move books and get books and take things from one place to another. I helped him out with some commercials, with a couple of commercials to help him out, but he never he never took responsibility on the I would say enterprise side of things. I think he wasn't very, I mean, he never told anyone, hey, if you want to help us out, I have a business, here's a job for you, you will be repaid for what you're doing. He always, well, our background was volunteering, so we just volunteered with no problem. But I mean, how ethical is it if someone has a social enterprise and doesn't come out telling people, well, you can volunteer, but I am also making benefits from this, so some remuneration is in order for you. I don't think. Is it too out there? I'm sorry for the
No,
question.
no, thanks. And it's really interesting and great. Like what I heard you describe was more of a nonprofit that's trying to do some revenue generating activities. In terms of definitions, as Golnaz said, we will get into that. Ryan will take us through those in a little bit. But I believe it could be structured as a social enterprise, but at the moment it probably isn't fully flushed out. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing. Crystal, and then we'll move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Chris Beth. Just a quick question. What stuck out to me was the mention of local community. And I was just curious if that's absolutely a requirement to be social enterprise. Like, what if you don't have a specific community that you're benefiting? What if it's a digital kind of program, right? And that you are benefiting people maybe in general, maybe it's the environment in general, maybe it's health in general.
Yeah. So what I would say to this, and Golnaz, feel free to jump in there. Yes, we live in a digital era, so your impact may go across borders, all of these things, but they're at the forefront. You could identify a specific people or a specific environmental issue that you are addressing. So you can be expansive, cross-border, cross-nation. That's not a problem, but you need, and for all of you that are even interested in entrepreneurship, building out your business in that way, you want to be very specific about who you're working to serve, because funders, you know, people that are working to support your venture, they want to see clarity around your message. What is the problem you're solving? Who has that problem? Or if it's environmental, speaking to that specifically, and what is your specific solution and impact, right? So those are the 4 things that I would say to keep in mind. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. Cole, you can go to the next slide. And I think we already alluded to some of this already in terms of some examples of social. So yeah, can you think of a social enterprise that stands out to you? So I know some have been mentioned. I think Mateus mentioned a social enterprise that he is connected with. Are there any others? So if you would like to share, feel free to raise your hand, or virtually, or Roll, if I can see your face. Do you know of any social enterprises that resonates with you, that stand out to you, that you've heard of in the past?
Did you want to speak to Tom Shoes? That's one that always comes up in these workshops.
So, this is not quite Tom's shoes, but I have a little shoe here that was made with a 3D printer. But Tom Shoes, is everyone familiar with Tom Shoes? Have you heard of them? So yeah, so Tom Shoes has a one-to-one model, and I know that they have expanded out beyond shoes. They do glasses as well. And really what they do when you as a consumer purchase, I think their prices is anywhere from $60 to $200 value of shoes. They give one away to a kid in a developing country that is in need of a shoe as well. So by paying more, it ensures that someone else can have shoes also. There are others. Does anyone else have another one in mind? I know that they've been in the press. Just Raj. Feel free to share.
I think I might be asking too many questions.
No, go right ahead.
So I've got an example of Ecosia. It's a search engine that actually uses the revenue from searches and puts them into planting trees and reforesting areas that really need a good forest, and try to repair the deforested areas. So would you think this would be a good example?
That sounds like an amazing example. If you want to put that link in the chat, I think that would be a good share for everyone. Golnaz and Orion, how does that, based on what he said with that example, what are your thoughts?
I'll let Ryan go first because he hasn't had a chance to contribute yet. And I'll add my 2 cents.
It's all good. I'm learning too. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. And I know it kind of goes deeper into what percentage of their profits are they using to plant trees? Because if they're taking $1 every week and planting 1 tree, it might not qualify. That'd more be like a social, CSR, social corporate responsibility. But if they're taking a substantial amount of their profits or the revenue and reforesting, like you're saying, that's pretty amazing. I like that.
Yeah, awesome.
I was just going to share an example of one that I love. I'm not an investor. I'm not. There's a social enterprise out of Halifax called Made with Local. They make granola bars. Have any of you heard of Made with Local? I'm just curious, anyone? Okay, so it's basically what they do, and you can go on their website and learn a lot more about what they do. So they source all their material, like everything, fruits, whatever that goes into producing the bars, from local farms and farmers. So they're supporting kind of local economy by sourcing that way. They've also partnered with local social enterprise kitchens that hire people that have barriers to the labor market. So they typically have some sort of physical disability or other barriers that may prevent them from accessing the labor market. So all their bars are made in partnership with these local social enterprise bakeries that support groups that, again, have barriers to the labor market. So that would be another example of a for-profit social enterprise that has embedded social impact into their entire business model. So one to check out of Halifax as well.
Are there any others? Okay. Lisa.
Hi, everyone. So that last one just reminded me of the company Loofah Farms. I don't know if people are familiar, but again, it was a program that I had subscribed to when I was living in Montreal, and they partner with a lot of local farmers. And they also do rooftop gardens in the city where they then run workshops on how to grow food sustainably and ethically. So I'm not too sure of their business model, but I'm sure there's something social enterprise-ish about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. One that comes to mind, very sweet and tasty, is here in Brampton, we have Christina's Tortina Shop Inc. And so basically it's a cake shop. On the outside, it may look very like a regular cake shop, but they actually hire kids or people with Down syndrome. And so the store is operated to give people with Down syndrome an opportunity to gain, a livable wage, get employment opportunities. So it's really the spectrum or opportunities to create a social enterprise, to create specific impacts is very open, and as you can see, as creative as possible. So at this time, I would like to thank you all. Mitawi, yes, Mateus, thank you so much for sharing. Yes, so I was going to say Mitawi as well. Mitawi has been in the press a little, but yes, Mitawi's model, definitely, they work with local artisans across the globe and use that revenue to support their youth programming and develop communities as well. Lisa, did you have your hand up again?
I do. I just had a question. The one that keeps coming to mind, and I have no idea, but I'm thinking about TED Talks. Like, I don't know what their business model is and how they generate revenue. And I don't know if this would fall under that category or not.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with TED Talks revenue model, but again, if they have outlined that they've established their entity to be able to affect change in a specific area and use, as Ryan said, not just $1, but a significant portion of their revenue to create that impact, or their model to create that impact, it definitely will fall under social enterprise. But I will look into that. Simi, I think you put in Khan Academy. Yes, I do believe that they would be identified as a social enterprise as well. So we can go to the next slide.
Great. So we wanted to give you a picture of what the social enterprise landscape looks like in Canada. And this is based on 2016 numbers. That is the most recent I could find through the research that we've done. And the citation is there. If you actually search on Canadian National Social Enterprise Sector Survey, you can access the report, and it will give you quite a comprehensive overview of what social enterprise is and what that landscape looks like in Canada as well. So for those of you interested, this would be slightly older, but a good report to check out. So according to this sector survey analysis that was done, these numbers are probably look a little bit different now, but at that point, more than just over 1,000 social enterprises in Canada that employ over 254,000 people. and provide services that impact in the millions. And in terms of kind of areas of focus, the report does a really nice job of breaking down what the focus area is for these social enterprises, everything from employment development to training for workforce integration, social, cultural, or environmental mission, poverty reduction. Those would be some of the areas of impact focus that was highlighted. According to the sector analysis, social enterprises that were surveyed reported revenue of 1.2 billion, of which 69% was generated through sale of goods and services. So very active, these entities are active across a diverse range of sectors, from health to finance, social services, food, tourism, etc. So if you're interested in learning more and getting kind of a broad overview, the National Social Enterprise Sector Survey is a great one to access. If we could go to the next slide, I'm going to pass it on to Ryan to define social enterprise and take us deeper.
Yes. Oh, wait, I think I was muted. I was telling somebody, I think the catchphrase of 2020 will be, oh, wait, I think I'm muted. So social enterprise, as we talked about earlier, it's when you're either producing a good or a service that, so one, you're having income generating activity, and two, you're creating a social impact in the community. So this is where we talk about the organization or the program is mission driven, so that you're selling the goods to generate revenue, but also helping to achieve this positive social, cultural, environmental objectives, and also social oriented venture, creating and solving a social problem through an entrepreneurial lens. And I would want to let everybody know, like, you're in the right place thinking about social venture. And now is the best time ever in history for social enterprises. The government acknowledges it, there's funding for it. Every day I get about 3 or 4 calls from business owners asking where they can find funding. A lot of business owners are looking for grants and not loans or different types of debt funding or equity. And now we actually have an answer for them. We can say the investment readiness program is something that you can plug into and help them along the way to accessing it. And I mean, the Community Foundations of Canada, we're in the 2nd cycle of it. The Canadian Women's Foundation is about to go into their 3rd cycle. So even today, we are a bit behind in catching up to all the money that's available for us. So thinking about how you're going to generate this impact is perfect timing. And I'm really glad that you're here today. And sorry, Cole, you can go to the next one. And a lot of the questions that we do get is around, okay, I want to run this social enterprise, but how should I structure the company? So technically, you can be a sole proprietor and run a social enterprise. The problem is you're usually not, you don't fall into any camps that would allow you to get funding. So typically a social enterprise was a nonprofit or charity that created income generating activity. Now it's expanded, and also cooperatives. Cooperatives were, if they're generating income, would be considered social enterprises as well. But for-profit companies, this is a bit new. So before B Corp was the body that would kind of say, hey, if you're for-profit, but you say that you're eco-friendly and socially conscious, we are going to assess your company and see if you actually score enough points to be considered a social enterprise. So now there's other bodies that do the certification. There used to be, what was it called? Oh my gosh. It was through, I can't remember. So they got absorbed into Buy Social Canada. Social Purchasing Project, sorry. So the city of Toronto, they were creating their social procurement process. And they said, if you go through the Social Purchasing Project, they will assess your company and deem if you're a social enterprise. And if you had that certification, then you'd be on a vendor list that City of Toronto purchasing agents would be able to buy from. So again, we talked about the mission at its core is to generate revenue, but it's a secondary role. So it's not your main driving force. And that's where you find capitalism takes that to the extreme where now you're trying to make as much money as possible because your main goal is to satisfy shareholder value. So how you get to maximum profits, it didn't matter if you mess up the environment or underpaid your workers or on a whole was not a good person or a good company. So just to dive deep into the bullets, it must address in a positive way a definable social, cultural, and or environmental issue. And I mean, the more check boxes you can hit, the better. But if you hit one of the three, that's typically what will allow you to classify yourself as a social enterprise. Again, you must generate revenue and you should be able to increase your income, impact, and sustainability through scaling. And this is where we want to talk about how you're running your social enterprise, because typically up till now, social enterprises run at a loss and they try to fill the gap with grants. So we try to coach our social enterprises that we work with to make sure that you're structuring a profitable entity. Like you have to run the business like a business, even though you have a social aspect to it. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you the scale that we typically work with. So yes, a traditional nonprofit is on one side, and then a traditional for-profit is on the other side. And we always say that social enterprise is the sweet spot in the middle, although there is kind of two sides to it. So if you're coming from the for-profit lens, and I was saying if you're only donating $1 to a foundation, you're more operating a corporate social responsibility. And then the more impactful you get with the community and with making sure you're not damaging the environment, you become more of a socially responsible business. And if you dive full in, and I know Quebec has a benchmark about 60%. So if you're giving 60% of your profits or more, you'd be considered a social enterprise. But when you're coming from the nonprofit side, now traditionally you're only trying to get grants, you are always looking for donations and doing fundraising, then you would shift into having an income generating activity. But the difference between just having an income generating activity and being a social enterprise would be, for example, Girl Guides. So Girl Guides, they go out around and sell their cookies, but the cookies are more of a fundraising activity. So it does generate income, but it doesn't, like that's not what drives the nonprofit. So if they were Girl Guides cookies own, and they like the only way that they could operate was to sell these cookies and make this money, that entity would be more of a social enterprise. But their nonprofit arm is generally funded through donations and funding through donors, donations and grants. So that's where you can kind of see where you fit. If you're a for-profit entity, you can say, okay, are we truly impacting the community in a way that would be considered a social enterprise? Or if you're a nonprofit, are you generating income to sustain the nonprofit to the point that you'd be a social enterprise? So you can go to the next slide.
Ryan, I see a question here in the chat while
Yes.
Cole switches over. Do the definitions suggest grants and income tax benefits?
And that's a great question, because that is what is missing in the whole social enterprise realm, is there's no legal entity that you can register as that is a social enterprise. So still, when you're going to incorporate your business or register your business, you would have to select, are you going to incorporate a nonprofit, or are you going to incorporate a nonprofit or for-profit? And because of that, you can't say, oh, I want to incorporate a social enterprise and get a specific benefit. And the benefits being a nonprofit is that you wouldn't pay taxes, and a benefit as a for-profit, you'd have a lot of tax write-offs, and you're more agile to be able to generate more income. So a social enterprise actually is the second layer. So there are no specific tax breaks for being a social enterprise yet. I know I was at a conference back in 2015 where they said that this was supposed to be coming, that they're going to create or carve out a lane for social enterprises. It hasn't happened yet, so I'm not holding my breath. But right now, it's mainly about how you access funding. A lot of the funders want you to be incorporated. So if you're a sole proprietor, you wouldn't be able to access certain funding. You'd have to incorporate either as a for-profit or a nonprofit. I hope that answers the question. Oh, and sorry, so to continue, were there any other questions before I just jump in?
No, you can go ahead. That was great.
Cool, cool. So talking about types of social enterprises, it really falls into two buckets. So mainly you're either employment-based or profit-based. I feel like mission-based, all social enterprises must be mission-based, whether you're, so employment-based is hiring from a specific marginalized segment of the population and helping them to obtain work. And traditionally that population wouldn't be able to obtain work. And that could be from being having a disability or being marginalized or or systematic racism. And then profit-based would be, you can hire whoever you want, but the profits that you generate are gonna support a specific, it doesn't have to be a specific organization, but a specific program in the community. So as I think it was Matthias mentioned about, oh my gosh, Nocarious, the search engine that plants trees. So they're taking a portion of their profits in order to impact the community by planting trees and reforesting a certain area of the world. So, and that's where we say, like, so your mission is above when you select what type. So first you would select your mission, and then you would select how you're gonna attack that mission. Is it based on who you hire, or is it based on how you use your profits? And for example, my company, the Detailing Knights, we work with youth in the community that are usually in conflict with the law, coming out of detention, but also we work with any high school student or college student or university student, but we also use our profits to now run programs in the community so that we teach entrepreneurship. So that's where we have the employment-based arm specifically about who we hire, and then the profit-based arm specifically about how we use the money that we generate. So
and the environmental as well.
Right, because we are waterless. So instead of using hundreds of gallons of water, we use 6 ounces of our solution, and we can fully wash your car. And also we steam clean the inside, plant-based. So we have a plant-based waterless car wash, which is safe enough to drink, but I don't recommend it, but I usually do that for demonstration. And then our interior all-purpose cleaners are all plant-based. So I always call it, we're actually the first vegan auto detailer in the world. That's our secret.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Cole, you can go to the next slide. So based on the things that you've heard thus far, we want to invite you to this Jamboard. So I just placed a link in the chat. If you can click on that, and Cole, if you could stop sharing this presentation and open up the Jamboard so everyone can see, that would be great. So basically the question is, what are some issues that could improve your community? So the invitation here is just to give everyone a chance to, create on the post-it note, or you could write directly on it. So I see folks are coming in. Great to see everyone there. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see that there's a sticky note option. Cole, if you just want to put your cursor over it so that everyone could see the post-it note. Thank you so much. So when you click on that, you feel free to type in a response. So we'll just ask one response per sticky note. I see poverty reduction. Great. Thank you so much for putting that in. And so if you want, we'll just spend about 3 minutes just putting in some ideas based on some of the things that you're observing in your community that you would like to, hope and wish that there were some solutions to, addressing these issues that exist in your community.
Sorry, Christopher, or ones that you may already be addressing through your ventures if you are at the rise or leap levels as well. So think about ones that maybe you are already working towards addressing.
Thank you for that, Golnaz. And I was going to also say, feel free to change the color of the sticky note as well. Did the question get moved? I think it did. 1 second.
That's awesome. If you can spread your ideas around the main question, that would be great. And I think Chris Beth's going to retype the question, which is, what are some issues that could improve your community?
Awesome. I see some good stuff coming in. Okay, we have about 2 more minutes, and then I will invite folks to, you know, share based on what they have seen. I see some common threads already, so I'm gonna try to group some of these based on what I'm seeing. Yeah, and sometimes they stack, so just feel free to move it around. That would be great. Okay, so I want to just open. Golnaza, do you want to add anything before we give folks a chance to just share briefly some of the things that they wrote? Okay.
I have nothing. Ryan, do you have anything to share before we open it up?
No.
Okay, awesome. So I just wanted to give this time, folks that have inputted stuff, if you didn't get a chance to put it in based on what you're seeing, you know, that has been identified here, what were some of the issues that you identified within your community, or ones that you're currently working on addressing or tackling at the moment? And if you'd like to share, you can raise your hand on the screen or raise your virtual hand, and I will see you as well. Or you could raise your 3D hand. Awesome. Crystal. Do you want, sorry, I saw you moved a little. Sure, you can share what you wrote.
I was just moving, thinking, oh, right, I'll lower my hand. But yeah, I've been having difficulties understanding if I am a social enterprise or my company, so I appreciate this. I wrote, one of the things is people feeling isolated. So some of you may know I work on creating activities for people to better bond and grow and learn with their loved ones. And so this feeling of, even though we're physically connected, even though today we're not, you know, feelings of isolation. So it's not one of those common, I forget the term, what people categorize as a social enterprise kind of focus, but I consider it part of well-being if I had to jam it in there. But I think it's a real problem, right? If we are feeling isolated, we're not connected, we don't feel like we have a purpose in life, if we are lost, if we don't know how to achieve our goals, I think it's a really big problem for how we as a human species, you know, can have a better life. So in my very well-formed question,
no, I think, thank you so much for sharing. And Golnaz definitely could speak a little bit more, or Ryan as well can speak to that. I would definitely say when we get into the next slide, and I know we will be talking about the overall social United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, sorry, SDGs, wellness is one of them, right? So now if you're to say, okay, we want to address this, what are the metrics that they are looking for? How does that connect to the story that we're telling, and really building out that story? Because it is impact focused, because one of the questions I oftentimes ask people, and I'll use Ryan as the question, like, what makes your detailing company different than others? Detailing companies exist throughout the world, but when you hear the story, it's environmentally friendly. When you hear that we're addressing and working with at-risk youth, like, you now could see those metrics of impact, which separates him from every other detailing company that's out there, right? So it comes down to really the tangibles about how you're affecting that change, as well as the story behind your social enterprise, right? So you get to define it ultimately, but at the same time, it's looking at those metrics and impact points. I don't know if Golnaz or Ryan has anything else to add to that. Awesome. Jazraz, you had your hand up?
Yeah. I think maybe like I wrote mental health, remove taboos and misinformation. I think that would go a long way in making sure that people actually have a strong mental foundation, because from my community, that's the South Asian community, and that's probably most of the people. That group also includes most of the people that would be outside of Canada. I think most of them have a pretty bad understanding about mental health. They, I mean,
Is it me or did we lose Jazraz?
We lost, but I think he's muted. Maybe try unmuting yourself again.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Right, technology, right?
Yeah.
So I was saying that I have a first-hand experience with people thinking that anxiety is all made up. And instead of talking it out, they just constantly jump on the bandwagon of getting medicines. Either they don't acknowledge mental health at all, or they straight away jump into getting medicines. So it's kind of a weird combination that I see, that people don't actually talk about building a good mental health system. And I think that is a big cause of, how do I say this? It's a big disadvantage for the people in my community, because they constantly depend on outside validation. So for example, even if they could, or they want to open up a social enterprise, they would probably think, I'm not confident enough to do this, or this is going to fail. So I believe that mental health, and I'm not sure how exactly relevant is this. This is something that's off the top of my head, but I believe that mental health and making people aware that mental health is a genuine thing that people have to be focused at could go a long way in making sure that people think healthy and then they live healthy.
Yes, and I want to just say thank you so much for sharing. And we will be showing you an example of one of our EDGE members who actually runs Link Mental Health. It is a platform which offers therapy and basically services to support people in this mental health space. But the way that they do it is really telling their social enterprise story, right? And so we will get into that a little more. We'll take one more before we switch over to the next one. I see two hands, so we will take two more. I saw, Favor, I saw your hand first, and then we will go over to Jose.
All right, thank you. My sticker is on obesity and foot pain, the issue of obesity and foot pain. I say this because first, I'm going to start off by saying that I'm in two programs at EDGE. One is the RISE program, because I'm launching a digital marketing agency by the end of the month. And the other one is an idea that I've had for about a year, which is the Explore program. So it comes back to when I was doing some research as a marketing student, I found that about 10% of Canadians bought an orthotic insole in the past 12 months. And this is because of foot pain, but about 75% says that because of a busy schedule, they do not have time to, let's say, exercise or live a healthy lifestyle. So I was just thinking about, because the majority of people that use orthotic insoles, and I hope I'm saying that right, is those having issues with foot pain or obesity. And the thing is this, I believe that if we can create an orthotic insole that could usually reduce pain with how you walk, run, and sit, but also be able to have the to make it short, the Fitbit ability of measuring your steps, your distance, your the weight loss, taking that information to your smartphone, and just giving you feedback on how to get better. If you could have that then in the orthotic, and so for that market, because I've seen that as a huge foot pain is a huge problem in Canada, as well as obesity. So I was just wondering if that's something that could be structured as a social enterprise, or how I could go around something like that. But that's one of that's the issue that I put on the board.
Awesome. And I think I like to say anything could be structured as a social enterprise, and you're in this right space of figuring out connecting those dots, right? So I would say keep doing the research. After this call, you'll have an opportunity to connect with Golnaz, myself, Ryan. By all means, we can dive deeper into that in terms of how you structure that moving forward. But thank you for that idea and thought as well. Jose.
Hi guys. So I'll try to be quick because I know I kind of shoehorned myself in here. So well, there's a big problem in my country as long as I have recollection, right? Well, you see, the problems I hear from you guys, well, they're mostly like psychological, mostly like what people are doing wrong and what can be done to improve themselves. But there's a big problem here that I noticed that most people take as like a common life occurrence, and maybe you guys wouldn't see it the same over at Canada or at more developed countries when people come over here from places like Europe or the States or Canada or Asia. Well, what you see is in the streets, it's not only people asking for money, but there are women who, let's say you have a baby, and they say, I will rent your baby so I can ask for money to people in cars. So people rent out babies to women who carry these babies and ask for money, and they're carrying these poor children at midday with the sun as hot as it can get. And well, basically, it just breaks my heart to see these kids and being used in these conditions, and how well, it's like 2 blocks away from our what you'd call a White House or a presidential house, and nobody does anything about it. And most people don't want to get into it because it's such a big issue. There are also some people who 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 go like who try to be ingenious in this way, and they don't even have babies. They just wrap a doll around a blanket and they say they have a baby, and they don't really have a baby. So when I'm in my car and I'm driving around with my father always hands out some money, and I tell him that you shouldn't be doing that because you're empowering them to keep doing this. And we've had a lot of newspaper coverage about these things also. And well, they say that most people earn more begging for money than in actual jobs. So I didn't write down poverty reduction, but it was what I was going to write down. I don't know whoever did write that down. You beat me to it. And well, it's a big problem. I don't know if there's a platform to get to fix it, but I say it's always best to teach a person to fish than rather give them the fish in the moment. And well, that's about as much exposure as I'm going to give. I love my country. No, I'm not bad mouthing it or anything, but it's a serious problem that I think if there's any way to fix it, it should get some attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And as you can see, based on what's written here, based on the things that were shared, there are lots of issues around and that exist, right? And so the goal here is, as you're thinking about developing a social enterprise, you know, I like to tell people, focus. Which problem or challenge are you going to focus on tackling first? You can go as broad as Ryan. So I go back to his detailing companies. 3 issues. So environment, people, all of those things. I mean, the nature of his business, he was able to do that. But instead of trying to do all at once, really thinking about where do we start and then how do we scale? I use the example of Amazon, right? Amazon, as we know it today, is that massive engine. Before Amazon became that big, massive engine, they started just selling books. They were a bookstore first, right? So really thinking about where do we start and how do we scale? Furthermore, when we start, how do we track that impact and how do we grow that impact, right? So just keep those things in mind. So Cole, if you want to just go to the next slide. And before you can go back to the slide with the question. And I will just ask if you could do the next poll. Just basically the question for everyone here is, do you identify as a social enterprise, or the idea that you have based on the things that we've discussed? Cole, are you able to trigger that poll for me? Awesome. So you have a poll if you want to, based on the things that we discussed, based on where you are, let us know how you rank your positioning. Okay, we'll wait for a couple more seconds. Okay, so I think we're at 17. I think you can publish the poll. Okay, awesome. So based on those that are in the room, we have people that are still in the don't know phase, which is great. You're gonna keep learning some more about it. And we have some people in the know phase. That is totally fine as well. And you know, if you're considering pivoting, you're in the right place as well. And for those of you who have an idea or already working on a social enterprise, you know, really finessing that story and building out and understanding the impact is really important. So Golnaz, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome, thank you. If we can go to the next slide, Cole. Thank you so much. So I'm curious how many of you have heard of the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Hands up if you have, so I can get a feel for our knowledge of it. Okay, I see a few hands going up. Okay, cool. All right, so a key ingredient is articulating a clear impact model, as Chrisbeth spoke to earlier. And again, I'm going to stress for those of you that do have an idea, a venture, et cetera, and planning to apply for the investment readiness program, this is a point that has been stressed in previous workshops, that really having a clear impact model will be really important, and articulating that will be really important, but all to say important for social enterprises nonetheless. And there are a number of different metrics and measurement systems, if you will, that we can kind of go to. And the UN SDGs is one that's increasingly becoming, I suppose, more of a trend, or one that certainly funders and investors understand and relatively comfortable with. So it gives us a common framework and a common language to start thinking about the impact. So the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, and this isn't my wording on the next slide, and we're not going there yet, but there is an organization that I'm going to introduce you to called SheEO that funds women identifying entrepreneurs, and they call the UN Sustainable Goals the world's to-do list, which I love, and that's exactly what it is. And so basically, these 17 SDGs were adopted by all UN member states in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and to ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. Very aspirational. I mean, these are big, complex issues that many of you have identified or have spoken about. So the SDGs are also integrated. That is, they recognize that action in one area will affect outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So again, for my venture, SDG number 5 is an important one for us, gender equality. And how the sustainable goals define that is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, okay? Again, half the world population identify as such, and yet inequality continues to persist. And I noticed one of the stickies talked to funding for women identifying entrepreneurs. To give you a stat, venture capital right here in Canada, 2 to 4% go to women identifying entrepreneurs, and of that, under 1% goes to Black and Indigenous women identifying entrepreneurs. That's a barrier, okay? It's a problem. A challenge that we're tackling through Accelerate Her Future, which is my venture that I'll talk to in a second, is that Black, Indigenous, and other women of color, racialized women are highly educated. So there's Catalyst Canada has put out stats that women of color have credentials from colleges and universities, approximately 69%, in fact, have credentials from colleges and universities, yet when we look at our organizations, they represent 6.5% of management roles in Canada. And of course, there's variances across sector. Probably the lowest that I've seen is within the corporate sector. But again, that's a barrier or a gap that we're trying to address aspirationally in terms of long-term impact through Accelerate Her Future. So if you go onto the UN Sustainable Development Goals website, you'll see that for any of these goals that may be of interest to you, or maybe ones that you're addressing, whether it's climate action or any of these, you can go in and they actually have definitions and they have broad goals and targets. And so, for example, for gender equality, some of the targets or sub-goals include ensuring women's full and effective participation and equal opportunity for leadership at all levels of decision-making in different facets of life. Another target is proportion of women in managerial positions. And so you can see why SDG number 5 is particularly important to the venture that I'm working on. I will note that the UN's SDGs are not the only system. It's one that's gaining more popularity, if you will. There are others that I'm less familiar with, but I did want to mention them so that you can check them out and see if they might be appropriate for your venture. So for example, the IRIS system is codified metrics, if you will, that also speak the language to funders and investors if you're looking at submitting proposals and want to use a credible impact model. And you can get more information about the IRIS system at iris.thegin.org. So that stands for the Global Impact Investors Network. There's also the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, which is another one. So for those of you that talk to mental health and well-being, that might be one that you want to check out as another system that focuses specifically on well-being. We are also running a webinar series in October on impact measurement. So those would be ones that would be good to attend if you're looking at kind of digging deeper into what impact is and how you might measure the impact of your programs or initiatives specifically for your social enterprise. If we could go to the next slide, please, Cole. So I just wanted to show you, I mentioned an organization called SheEO. SheEO was founded right here in Canada, in Toronto, in fact, by a serial entrepreneur named Vicky Saunders. SheEO their core value is radical generosity as a community. That's what they practice, supporting women and non-binary people working towards the world's to-do list, which is essentially the UN SDGs. So I've been an activator, I'll be transparent, I've been an activator or funder within this community where every year activators, 500 across Canada, come together. We essentially gift $1,100. We don't get that money back. That fund, those dollars go into a crowd fund that gets pooled. And for the ventures that are selected each year, it gets divvied out in 0% loans, which is paid back over 5 years and goes back into a perpetual fund that gets given out again. So we're building towards a perpetual fund. As you can see, you can go on their website, and I've provided the hyperlink below to get a feel for what these ventures are. They are all advancing the UN SDGs in different ways. So to get a feel for what do these ventures do, what UN SDGs or impact they're having and what they're advancing, it's a good site, a good portfolio to go through to get some insights around different examples right here in Canada. SHEO has also expanded into the US, New Zealand, and Australia. So the portfolio is international in nature. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. I wanted to touch on theory of change. I'm not going to give you a big lesson on theory of change. I think that goes beyond kind of the scope of this webinar, and I see we have just over 5 minutes left, but it's important enough to mention something for you to look into. And if you have questions about creating a theory of change for your venture, you can certainly connect with Chris Beth, myself, or Ryan. So a theory of change basically explains your organization or venture's intended path to impact by outlining the causal linkages in an initiative. So again, the short-term, immediate, long-term outcomes. And again, the identified changes are mapped out in an outcome pathway that shows the relationship and the flow between outcomes along the path. And I'm going to give you an example. I know this is a lot of jargon and terminology, but essentially it shows what is the long-term outcome you wish to have, and how do you work back to what resources are needed and what projects or activities are needed to achieve that. So if we can go to the next slide, we have a live example I wanted to show you. So Bootcamp for Change is actually one of the ventures, our members at EDGE. And their vision is to improve the lives of those who they serve by creating fitness programs within shelters and educational workshops as well for youth that are experiencing homelessness, okay? And so as you can see with their theory of change, if we start all the way to the right of the model, the ultimate impact, that's really the starting point when we think about creating a theory of change. We start with the long-term impact we wish to achieve. Essentially, what is the systemic change that we expect to see in the long term? And that could be a few years down the line. So in this case, their ultimate impact is improved society. Reducing harmful stereotypes, so dismantling them even, less burden and on healthcare and social welfare systems through kind of the work that they do. And their clients would have increased social inclusion, improved health, etc. Okay, so those are longer term ultimate impact that they wish to see. Then we work backwards on looking at the outcomes. So what are the intended and sometimes unintended changes stakeholders might experience from our interventions? So in this case, participants are in better health, participants have foundation of sustainable livelihood, education, etc., etc. You can read for yourself. And then working back, we look at the activities that need to take place for our outputs and outcomes to happen, which ultimately lead to the longer term impact that we want to have. And then all the way on the left side, these are the inputs, so the resources or investments that are needed to ensure that these activities take place. So in this case, they need partner agencies, youth identified at risk, and broader society, and they've also identified their stakeholders as well. So an example of a theory of change, again, this is iterative. It requires some good thinking around, what you hope to achieve. And if you're interested in exploring this deeper, you can always connect with, again, Chris Beth, myself, or Ryan as well. In the interest of time, let's move on. I'm going to pass it on to Ryan to see if there's anything else you wanted to talk to around social enterprise structures, or if you feel like you've covered them off at this point. So over to Ryan. And if we can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, we did touch on it. And sorry, just to touch on what Jose was talking about with what he's seeing in his country. And it's interesting because you see the symptom, but now what we talk about with the SDGs and what we talk about with doing a social enterprise is digging deep into the root cause. And that's where that no poverty SDG #1, you have to dig so deep to understand how do we pull a country or a city or a community out of poverty. And we can do it with purposeful action. And the way that you structure your social enterprise has a lot to do with that, because it's going to determine your approach. And we did talk about, you can be a registered charity, you can be just a normal nonprofit organization, and you can also be a for-profit company. We're seeing the emergence of cooperatives and not registered, I call them grassroots organizations, because you can get funding as a grassroots organization. Chris Beth and I have been part of applications and granting without having a registered body. So that is an option. And I believe Ontario Trillium Foundation has the Youth Opportunities Fund that you can get funding just by being a grassroots organization, and also Laidlaw. So not feeling like you have to plug yourself into any of these different buckets, but typically different funding, you have to be one of these 5. So it's good to know them. And then if you do have questions, please find a lawyer. We had a panel with 2 great lawyers on it. Robert, I'll butcher his last name, it's like Wakarat, and Andrea Henry. They both run law firms that, I don't know if they specialize in social enterprise, but they have a deep understanding of the journey that social enterprises and social entrepreneurs like yourself go through. So I'm sure Edge can get you their contact information, and they're great to reach out to understand what would be the best option for you.
Awesome. So just in the interest of time, you can go to the next slide, and the next 2 slides just basically identify organizations that we serve here at Edge, and I'll just read their names. So if you want some more information about the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, definitely connect with Ryan about that. I mentioned briefly Link Mental Health. They focus on providing mental health resources to all people and matching based on ethnicity, race, sexuality, ethnicities, things that oftentimes may be tabooed in certain cultures. They work to help to lower that barrier, but still making it affordable and accessible. The next slide, we have Empowered for X, Accelerate Her Future, and Bootcamp for Change. Golnaz, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, very quickly, I wanted to talk about Bootcamp for Change, just because I shared their theory of change.
Yep.
So as I mentioned, they are one of our members, and if you go on their website, www.bootcamps for change, I think their story is really awesome to read about, around how this idea came to life by Katie, who's the founder. And essentially, she wanted to build a sustainable model and created, she also has a bit of a hybrid structure with Boot Camps for Change as a social enterprise, and Sweatier for the Better, which is a not-for-profit. And again, they run fitness programs in shelters specifically, and hire fitness trainers to teach peers, while they also offer scholarship programs, etc. So they're doing some really interesting work, and really being a catalyst for change in the shelter system by improving youth physical health. They're preventing illness and reducing stress. So talk about the wellness pieces that are underneath the fitness work that they do, and the impact that has on the people that they train and work with. So they have trained over 1,000 youth that are considered at risk. They've run over 300 workshops and mobilized over 300 fitness instructors. And you can find more information about them at Boot Camps for Change if you want to read up about what they do. Chris Beth, did you want to talk about Empowered for X?
So I would just say quickly, in terms of the SDGs that we identified with, SDG 9, 8, and 10, one 9 is around innovation and technologies. We work with predominantly BIPOC entrepreneurs. In particular, we're working on building out our accelerator for Black-owned operators. What we found, particularly due to COVID, many Black entrepreneurs and Black founders were forced to close their business, one, because they were not structured properly, but most importantly, we identified a digital gap in knowledge around that and really looking to close those barriers within what we're seeing on that economic landscape. But in terms of what we do here, I'm really working on helping businesses structure themselves operationally, systematically, as well as sustainably. I think one of the biggest things is that sustainable venture, long-term impact, creating generational wealth for ventures.
Amazing. And very quickly, Accelerate Her Future is a career accelerator for Black, Indigenous, and racialized women in college and university or early careers. And I talked about that big stat around how we find this population is highly educated, yet we don't see there's a gap between that translating into workplace experiences and advancement into leadership roles. And I think Ryan made such an interesting point that while our outcome around seeing representation and leadership is more of a long-term outcome that we have. When we did our research and narrowed further down, we're focused on 3 things, immediate things that we can do that ultimately lead to that long-term outcome. Number 1, connecting our participants and those we serve with influential networks, right when our population that we serve is in college and university or early career. That goes a long way. Connection to mentors and sponsors. We don't have enough sponsors. Secondly, it's career advocacy skills and leadership development skills. And thirdly, how to disrupt internalized bias that may lead to imposter syndrome and really tap into the excellence that we have and the confidence to be able to take up space and take advantage of opportunities and really step in. So those are the 3 big issues that we're working on through our programming. Moving on to the next slide. Is there, Ryan, do you have anything to add before we move on? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna move through this very quickly. I was going to have everyone kind of contribute to what might be ways that you could keep informed about social and environmental issues that you identified that you care about. So in the interest of time, please throw any ideas you have in the chat box of how can you keep informed, and I'm gonna give you some examples as well. Okay, so I know Favor, for example, talked about having done research. It's amazing. So doing your research is a great way to keep informed. Doing interviews, right? Action, bias to action, getting out there and speaking to potential stakeholders through focus groups, interviews, conversations. Really important to better understand what your community or the audience that you care about might be experiencing and going through. And I ask Ryan and Chris Beth to maybe pop ideas in the chat box as well of things that you've done to keep informed about the issues that you care about through your ventures as well. Looking at reports, right? So the Peel region, if you're really focused on this community, has reports. The community foundations have reports. And again, research, secondary research would be helpful as well. Attending public forums, conferences, maybe events that are speaking to some of the issues that may be of importance to you. Watching the news, following social media, right? You can get really creative about different ways that you can keep on top of and informed about the issues that really matter. And so before we move on to the next slide, I'm gonna ask others to pop in other examples as well. So we have WhatsApp groups, collaborate with other organizations working in this space. Excellent, okay? So let's keep moving. Next slide, we also have some social enterprise resources that you can tap into. If you haven't heard of these organizations, please do check them out. Center for Social Innovation in Toronto, SOCENT, and we'll make sure to send these out to you through a follow-up email as well. Social Enterprise Ontario, Social Enterprise World Forum, Future of Good has some great articles that they tend to publish on their blog. BiSocial, the B Corp website, Interweave through the McConnell Foundation. So we've given you a few places that you can start. Ryan and Chris Beth, do you have any others to add? I know we co-created this list together, but are there any others in light of some of the conversations that you'd like to add to the list before we wrap up?
No, the one that comes to mind is just connecting with your chambers as well, right? Like chambers oftentimes have data on issues that, at least from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and some of the other investment readiness program partners, the expert service providers, there's the S4ES, which is a group. I know Buy Social's in the group, and I think Common Good Solutions and the Social Entrepreneurship Institute, and you have Interweave there. And there's some other ones like Raven Indigenous Capital Partners. So understanding like the Indigenous community has been doing social enterprise from the jump. And so now we are catching up to what they're doing. So they have a lot of great resources to share and for us to duplicate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. All right, last slide. So if we go to the next slide, awesome. We have a number of sessions coming up over the month of September, October, and November. You can go to sheridancollege.ca events to check them out. Ryan will be coming back again. We're running the fundraising strategies and grant writing for social enterprise starting this week. So this is in collaboration with ACBN. This is a four-part webinar series with Dr. Bethany Osborne and Ryan, who's on the session today, where we'll take you through fundraising strategies and grant writing. And for those that are applying to the IRP, we will have some working sessions with Bethany and Ryan as well. So you can check those out. And if I could have, Cole has already shared the link to our events page, or Chris Beth has, thank you.
Yeah.
Cole,
Yeah,
if you could please share the link to our evaluation form. So as we wrap up, if you could please take a few minutes to complete the evaluation form for today's session. We're always looking for ways to improve and serve our community better. So we ask that you take a few minutes now to fill that out before you move on with your day. And I would like to thank Ryan so much for joining us and sharing your on-the-ground experience, as well as Chris Beth for doing the same. Thank you to all our participants for joining today, for sharing, for interacting with us. And as you kind of go on this path, if you have any questions, if I could ask Ryan and Chris Beth for you to share your email addresses in chat, and I will do same in case any of you would like to follow up, have any questions, would like to chat further. We're all available to meet with you and would be happy to do that. So without further ado, if you could, again, the link to the evaluation form is there. You have the email addresses as well. Thank you again. And with that, we're going to wrap up our session. We'll stay behind a few minutes in case anyone wants to stay for any quick questions, but again, you can follow up by email. Thank you, everyone.
Plug.
Please, please.
If you are interested in seeing us again tomorrow and on the 17th, we have, for those of you that are specifically in the ideation stage, there is a workshop tomorrow night. If you go onto our event page, it's called That's an Idea. And it could be a great place where you come with one of our professors, Patrice Essen, to flush out what your idea is, and we could go from there. And then on the 17th, the fundraising strategy and for grant writing begins. So 16th and 17th, it could be a busy week for you if you join us again. Thank you so much for being here.
And Cole, we can stop the recording. Thank you so much.